Welcome back, everybody, to Agree to Disagree.
And still be friends.
This is Jason,
And I'm Robert.
and this is our very special Halloween episode. And we kind of were talking, and what better topic to finally dip our toes into than the supernatural versus the natural, which I think each of us represents that opposing perspective pretty well. Fair and balanced, and damn, it's an interesting topic. Always has been to me.
I think, as I've reflected on this throughout the week, I think this is probably, it has the potential to be one of our more controversial topics, because I think that people have a belief about the supernatural or the lack thereof, and they're pretty set in it.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one of us has the prototypical American, for lack of a better way of putting it, view on ghosts and witches and demons and things like that. Like, Hollywood has really taken the reins and shown us what we should believe about that world, if I, for lack of a better way.
Yeah, it certainly gets a lot of representation in media. And I think it's because it's so interesting and because it is such a polarized sort of subject matter. And unlike most of our topics, at least from my belief, it's not falsifiable. So it's not actually something that can be discussed with any degree of like scientific scrutiny. It's just simply not something that falls into that realm. So it kind of really exists much more in the realm of philosophy. And that's my favorite thing, because my favorite type of question is the one that really doesn't have an answer. And I think this is probably the creme de la creme of that type of question, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, using logical analysis to break down how something makes you feel.
Right. So I guess we'll dig right in. So it's the day after Halloween, so we're a little late on this episode, but dang it, it's only one day after Halloween. By the way, what did you do for Halloween? Anything fun?
It was more of a typical Friday night. I celebrated more at work than I did at home. I have a luchador mask that I got in Cozumel.
Why does that not in any way surprise me?
I actually went to a luchador event down in Cozumel when I went on a cruise.
Oh, that's cool.
And got to watch actual luchadors. And it was a couple-hour event, but as part of it, I got to buy an actual luchador mask.
Nice.
So when we turned on the cameras yesterday morning, I'm sitting there with a luchador mask on, and I've got a poncho. It was pretty fun. It was just, I think that was about as big as we got for Halloween. Right now, it's the supporting the son as he does his Halloween stuff. We were up pretty late because he went to the slaughterhouse.
Oh yeah,
haunted house, and he went out and trick-or-treated with his friends, and I think he barely did that. They got dinner and then slaughterhouse, but we didn't get home until like after midnight because we had to go pick him up. But he had an amazing time, and there's some funny pictures of him getting harassed by people at the haunted house. And
what's funny about that, the first year that the slaughterhouse opened, and this was, man, I want to say a decade ago or so. I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's been long enough to where I don't remember exactly when it was. I did the sound design for the first run of that. My buddy Satirus Jeering kind of was a founding member of that organization, and he's still involved. He built it up. He does all of the physical design. And he brought me in as a sound designer because we worked together at the Des Moines Social Club where I was a sound designer. And it was fun. It was fun. Making a kind of a hog-themed soundtrack that was like on a loop that ran like an hour. Just terrible sounds, pigs being slaughtered and blood hitting the floor. I really enjoyed it.
I guess they went a little old school with that. We watched a little video on some of the design, and it was very heavy Slipknot design this year, but I guess there was one portion that was like pigs
Yeah.
and mutilated bodies and whatever.
Strangely enough, I've actually never been through the slaughterhouse, so I only know it from whatever sound design a decade ago, which they never used again. So I couldn't tell you, but I hear that it's pretty scary. We didn't do any haunted houses. We went out with Chris's kids trick or treating, and they're 8 and 4, so there was a couple of houses that we had to avoid because there was a big spider or a zombie outside. Those types of things scare those that age group. So it was fun though. It was really cute. Nice little neighborhood in West Des Moines where just a bunch of little rugrats running around doing what they do. It's different than I remember as a child. There was just a lot more traffic in the streets. I mean, foot traffic. There's just kids everywhere back in the day. And I would come back, at least from my memory, I know things are different when you're a kid. Everything seems bigger. But it felt like my bucket was always way more full than these kids' bucket was. So I was like, maybe you kids need to take a page from our book, because I knew how to get some candy back in the day.
Truth. Had a pillowcase.
Oh, pillowcase, yes.
Yeah.
I think I went out with a pillowcase one year. But then I started using those buckets that you would get from McDonald's from the Happy Meal.
Yeah.
Those were cool.
Those just didn't carry enough.
No, you usually had to bring more than one.
Yeah.
At least back then. But
I think the desire to go and do like Halloween parties and stuff like that, I always think it sounds fun, and then it just never materializes. And now I just kind of live vicariously through the kid.
Yeah. Up until this year, because my son is almost 17, so his days of trick-or-treating are kind of long gone. So it's been a few years since I've really experienced it. I've handed out candy a couple years here at the house, but for the most part, I've not participated a lot in that in the past few years. So it's kind of nice to get back to it, and I love to live vicariously through kids, and that was absolutely the experience that I had last night. So that very nostalgic one for me. And then you look through like social media, the week of or even the month of Halloween, and you've got kind of an example of what we're going to talk about today. This polarized perspective as it pertains to Halloween. On TikTok especially, it seems, there's this community of Christians, I would imagine, kind of that's how they express themselves, and how evil and satanic and, demonic Halloween is. And it's definitely a negative opinion that is outwardly expressed. And then the whole other half of TikTok is, dressing up and giving tips for, throwing a cool Halloween party, I love like the cakes and the treats and things that are like zombie themed or monster themed. There's a whole community of that. So I just think it's funny that even on social media, you can see that divide between the good and bad of Halloween. So maybe that's what we talk about today.
Well, I know we're going to go down the path of the supernatural, but as a Christian, I want to address that because I consider myself a fairly educated Christian, and I've been exposed to a lot of the denominations and the spectrum of Christianity, if you will.
Yeah.
And I feel like Halloween, I feel like my church does it right, and we do a trunk or treat every year. It's an outreach opportunity. There's costumes. There's, it's designed for people to have fun and enjoy.
I like that.
Like I would say anything can be turned into an idol. Anything can be turned into too much, And in the case of Halloween, I think if you obsessed about it, and if you really believed you were summoning demons or whatever, you might have to have a conversation, or seek some help there. But, kids dressing up in costume. I mean, like over the years, the superhero costumes, monster costume. It's just fun. It's just fun. And I think you're more. Well, I don't want to poke anybody for their convictions. I'll just say, I personally with all of the reading and the research over the years in Christianity, I don't see grounds for villainizing it any more than you would villainize any other holiday that we celebrate.
Yeah.
You know, like it's
Including Christmas. I mean,
yeah, there's
certain perspectives of the Christmas holiday. I mean, it's Santa Claus, it's Christmas trees, it's presents, materialism, right?
well, and you can go down. Funny enough, no pun intended, but you can go down that rabbit trail with Easter.
Oh, yeah.
There are various, paths that you can research, and you can see, some of the lore and the history behind how these holidays were developed, and how they take away from other pagan practices and things like that. So there's not like, if you take it too far in any of these cases, there's a fine line, but I don't think Halloween is malicious or demonic.
I don't feel that way either. And it's funny because you'd mentioned that, if you can make anything into an idol, if you like obsess over it or make it too important. And it seems like with Halloween in particular as a holiday, there is one segment that does seem to obsess over it. And they obsess over it in the realm of, this is satanic and this is demonic and it's evil. And there's so much energy that goes into like validating this holiday that's really just there for, at this point, I mean, I don't know the depths of the origins of it, but how it's expressed in America in 2025, it's like what you said. It's kids dressing up, having fun, getting candy, running around, and certainly not anything that represents evil or demonic possession or anything. But that segment, at least on the internet, that seems to obsess over it, really puts a lot of energy into it and kind of makes it into something that otherwise I don't think it would be.
Well, and there's a whole conversation you could have about people that use their piety to make themselves seem holier than thou, and that hurts Christianity as a whole.
I think Wright calls it towards the left virtue signaling.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And it's gross in every expression, in my humble opinion.
I don't. I guess one last thought on it, and then we can kind of segue into what we were talking about, or what we were thinking about talking about. Jesus said, "Let the kids come to me." That's a paraphrase. It's a heavy paraphrase from maybe an oversimplification, but Jesus was about the little kids, and he loved them. And I don't think that he would have a problem, if they were just having fun for fun's sake. Like, it's not, I don't think these kids are running around believing that they're wearing costumes to ward off demons or trying to avoid. I think there's some kind of lore about it that said that the costumes was to fool certain spirits from taking the kids or something like that. Like there's all kinds of lore out there about the origin of Halloween.
Yeah.
And I'm just like,
I should have looked into it before this episode.
Yeah.
I didn't. Halloween to me is just fun.
Well, that's what it should be. Like, I think when you look at the scary movies and stuff, we talked about that a little bit, what Hollywood's done with it. I love a good scary movie. I love, and the difference between some people's view of horror films and others, I'm the more mental horror.
Yeah, the psychological. Yeah.
I want something that makes me think about it 3 days later and go,
yeah,
oh man,
something that's plausible. Something. Yeah.
I don't. It's not that I dislike like movies like Scream and those have their place. They're fun, but
I don't like violence very much. I don't like to watch it. So like slasher films or monster films where there's a lot of gore and gnashing of teeth, I don't really care for that.
Well, and you and I are both gun guys. I think it's hard to watch those movies for me and not go,
why didn't you have a gun, bro?
I'm gonna shoot that guy. Like
this plot would be over if somebody had a gun, for God's sake.
Yeah. The guy in the Scream costume would have been shot by one of my friends.
Right.
or me, but I digress.
Roll credits.
I think we were gonna touch on the we'll just start with ghosts. Why not ghosts?
So I'll just kind of lay out my perspective.
Yeah.
I, again, am not a religious person. I would call myself supremely agnostic. I'm just very curious by nature, and I want to know how things work, and if it's possible, why things work. I don't believe in any intrinsic purpose, so to speak. I think that people are just here because of, the natural processes of entropy. And by the universe's standards, there's nothing special about us. Although it seems, at least from our perspective, that us is a very rare thing. But my personal belief, I've never experienced anything supernatural. I've never seen a ghost. I've never felt a presence. I've never been in a place that felt dark or ominous, or that there was an energy of any kind. I guess at the heart of me, I have zero belief in anything that's supernatural. And I believe that everything, even if we were to, through science or through direct observation, find something that we would otherwise call supernatural, ghosts and things, I would believe that there's a natural explanation for it, something that could be falsified and could be in time understood. But my personal experience is that I've never experienced any of those things. And I've had a lot of conversations about this because it's very interesting to me, because people that believe on the other side of this topic, they believe very firmly, and it's something that's deep. It's like almost like in their DNA. And that's really something that's interesting to me, that two human beings could have such different experiences to where we believe in a completely different version of reality. And that's kind of how I look at it. But what are some of your thoughts?
Well, I'll say my belief in the supernatural, obviously
being a Christian, is de facto supernatural.
Yeah. Gotta kind of have a little bit there, right?
Yep.
I used to love the shows like Ghost Hunters and things like that. And I didn't grow up Christian. I kind of segued into that in my teens, and then really nailed it down in probably my 20s,
It's interesting. It's the opposite of my experience.
What an oversimplification of my Christian testimony, by the way. But
it's like a 40-minute podcast.
Right. That's why I was like, let me think of how to say that in the most simple terms possible. I used to watch those shows, and you see the different tools they use to try and measure, EMF and thermal cameras and things like that. And it's fascinating because they're definitely measuring different energies and things like that. It's like so you're watching and you're
definitely
going, well, they're seeing something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what they're seeing, but that wasn't the point of what, at some point as I was learning about Christianity, it kind of clicked. The Bible doesn't really allow for a human spirit to stay on this plane when it dies. You either go up or you go down, and again, oversimplifying, but
and being somebody who's not Catholic, you don't subscribe to the notion of purgatory, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Okay.
I've not seen anything that supports that in the Bible.
Right.
I'm Protestant Christian, I guess. I lean mostly Baptist, and for the listeners, put that where you will. Everybody's got their thoughts, but the light bulb clicked. Well, that ghost can't be a human spirit. And then in Ephesians 6, 11 and 12, Paul talks about putting on the whole armor of God because we're standing against the powers and principalities. And he's talking about the spiritual realm here on earth and what that represents. And I feel like what that implies, and I'm not that, ironically enough, Kirk Cameron has his own show. He's a Christian.
Yes,
And,
it is.
he had an author on, and I just saw this on YouTube earlier this week. This author wrote a book about this subject, and I just say that to say, apparently I'm not the only Christian that kind of thinks like this. I think that when you look at spiritual manipulation, if you will, I think it's either demonic or angelic, and that's why I said our viewpoints, this particular topic is more controversial, I think, than we're lending.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to make any friends on this.
Yeah, no, because my stance is in the popular belief of what a ghost is. You'll hear people say, well, that's just, Uncle Jim, and he, he's just looking over me, and I'm like, what did Uncle Jim do to deserve that?
Like, it'd have to become an angel.
Yeah, well, yeah, or like he didn't get anything. Like that's his afterlife, is he has to follow you around.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, right. So like the evidence, and when you put it in a biblical perspective, it doesn't support. Now, what a demon's job, especially there's a book out there called The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, and it's a very, very interesting read, but it's a higher ranking demon writing to his nephew, and this demon is talking about manipulating a man, and talks about kind of what their whole job is. And a demon's whole job is to make you believe in anything but Christianity. So if ghosts are real, the Bible can't be true, like that they don't line up, right? So if you had a spirit in your house, and it was, even if it was a good spirit by those standards, well, the Bible doesn't say that you can die and become a ghost and haunt somebody, or lend them any kind of,
or guardian angel.
Yeah, whatever.
That's not how it works.
In fact, the angels are different. Creation
Different
together.
thing. They were there long before humans.
Yeah. So that, when you look at witches and ghosts and the supernatural realm, as far as like what you would see in Halloween, I believe there's demonic influence in those things, but that's where people who are practicing witchcraft, as I used to study with, I did tarot cards, and I think I told you about it one time, but I was doing tarot cards at a party one night, and I was young, 19, 20. Like I said, I was dabbling, right?
Yeah.
And stranger comes, this guy, similar age, he comes in, he asks me a question, and the way with tarot cards is you hand the deck of cards to the person, they shuffle them, they have a question in mind, and then you just lay them out and you answer. You read an influence off of whatever the cards are saying. Well, I looked at this spread and it wasn't good, and he's like, I want to know if my girlfriend is going to stay with me. And without missing a beat, I go, well, are you going to stop cheating on her? And I didn't know this person from, anybody else, but somehow that information came to me, and he turned white and he's like, how did you know that? And I'm like, dude, it's the cards. I don't know. And that scared me. That scared me away from him. That kind of information. Like, there's no, obviously there's mentalism, and, there, you could say, I'm a smart guy. I probably tied some, but I didn't have anything to go on to kind of come to that. But the influence on those kind of things, that's where I think what we believe is controversial, because mine, I believe it's demonic. And on the very flip side of that, anybody who's listening and believes in ghosts, they have you saying that just doesn't make sense, and me going, yeah, that's demonic. It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. I mean, I hear things like that, and there's multiple things that come to mind as a potential explanation that just don't require any sort of supernatural intervention. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's where the big divide is. And I don't know how much of my perspective on this is biased to a degree in which I would gloss past, empirical evidence. But I like to think that I'm pretty rational minded. But again, this is not a topic that's, terribly rational. It's not logical. It's not scientific. So it's really just kind of a philosophical sort of topic that we can just discuss, and a lot of anecdotes and this type of thing, because there's really no data. And that's one thing that, you look at these ghost hunter shows and you look at science since it's been around. There's just not been any type of experiment that's ever been designed and executed that has any potential to shed light on this notion of supernatural, spirits or otherwise. Now, when we get into consciousness, that's something that's very interesting to me, because science is struggling with it, trying to understand what it is, let alone how does it emerge, or is it elementary to existence? We just don't know. So it's one of those topics where science lends very little assistance, and all that's left is this philosophical and anecdotal sort of expression of the ideals that this topic is housed within. So it's fun. It's a fun one. But I myself have just never had that feeling that, oh my God, something just happened, or oh my God, something is in here. And anything that, has happened to me that's weird or coincidental, it's nothing that's ever tripped any trigger in me that's like, well, there is no rational explanation for this. This feels supernatural. I just don't have any of those experiences. So I think it'd be really cool to come across one of those. But I just, even going to, haunted houses, or like my partner Chris's house, she'll tell you that because her father's ashes are stored there and they're in the basement, that he is there, and he has been seen by people and has talked to people. And maybe it's because I'm a non-believer, but I've never had any of that. So I'm in the basement alone, bringing up some laundry or something. It's never a thought. When I have thought about it, though, nothing happens. There's no fear. There's no change in temperature. There's just nothing. And that's just generally been my experience with all things supernatural, is regardless of the set and setting and who I'm with, I just don't ever have the experience that they describe to me. And I wonder, back to your point a few moments ago, about demons and their influence and their manipulation, as you put it, what do you think manipulates a man like me who just doesn't believe in any of that whatsoever? Is that a demon that makes me feel that way? Is that what causes a guy like me, who's generally, I'm a father. I'm interested in social work. I am interested in social justice. I'm interested in a lot of the human experience, and I, often cry at the pleas of, people that are suffering. It's a big part of me. I'm very sensitive. I'm very emotional. So I don't believe necessarily in an objective good or evil, but I don't think that I'm a bad person. I don't think many people do, but I'll say that. I don't feel like I'm a bad person. But what influences a guy like me that's generally decent into being somebody who absolutely does not believe in any way, but is open to these things? Because if they do exist, I would like to be aware of them. What do you think has influenced a guy like me?
Well, let me answer that by prefacing with my own philosophy on, and we've talked, and it's still a potential. I'll hang this out there just because, put it in the comments if you'd like to see this. We've talked about potentially going like Villisca Axe House or something like that.
Yeah.
And just seeing if either one of us was influenced by it. Now, the reason I bring that up is, as a Christian, we kind of talked about this, not on the podcast, but we kind of talked about this. I believe as a Christian, the Holy Spirit seals us.
Mm-hmm.
There's
armor.
There's what's that?
An armor that it gives you.
Yeah. I feel like if a demon was to go after me for manipulation, showing himself, haunting my house, being the exorcist or poltergeist kind of demon, those kind of things would only drive me closer to God because of the fact that I already believe.
Sure.
And so I feel like their attacks on somebody like me is more temptation and the things that like keep them entertained, keep them lazy, not to get too, deep into that.
Yeah.
But like all they got to do is, keep me distracted. And that would be, just making sure I'm playing enough video games that I'm not doing anything good for the cause. If you
I see.
You know what I mean? Like they keep me distracted.
Yep.
So I preface it that way because they're strategic. They have different approaches to different types, right? And I think for you, if my knee-jerk reaction on the question, because I really hadn't given it any thought, but for you, going off the kind of Screw Tape Letters premise and things like that, because you don't already believe, I wouldn't change a thing.
Just leave me the way I am.
Yeah. Well, and all they have to, like, if anything, I would put more information in front of you that scratches the itch that, like, I don't have enough, when we've talked about this, like with the age of the earth and things like that, I don't have I'm not a geologist, I'm not a, but I know that there's science out there that kind of lends one way and lends the other, whatever. I would give you just enough information to keep you fascinated with all that, and I wouldn't change a thing because I don't have to. You don't.
Well, it's funny because from my perspective, when I reflect honestly inward, if I were to encounter a demon, or something that I would interpret as that would push me into a place in which I am much, much more open-minded to consider the existence of God. So maybe to your point, that's why they don't mess with me, because any observation or experience of supernatural would put me into that place where, because I supremely want there to be someone driving this train. That's why I'm so interested in grand unified theory and quantum mechanics and joining relativity with that, because that gives us much further insight as to the nature of reality and existence. And that science has not been able to achieve that yet. And I don't know if there's simulation. I don't know what it is. Where does it come from? Or does it come from anything? But it would be very satisfying to my soul if I were to know that there is a creator, if there is a God. And I will be honest, if I had the sensation or the experience of coming across something supernatural, that would open my mind to things that I currently have zero belief in, like the existence of a creator. I don't know necessarily an Abrahamic God, but I would definitely believe that there is much more to reality if I were to directly experience one of these things. And so maybe that's why they don't mess with me. Well, that's all it would take.
I mentioned earlier we're gun guys.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, you see the experience out there. Some people that are like either indifferent or maybe even anti-gun, and then they get mugged.
Right.
And then they're like, where do I get me one of those? Like that's that. I think that lends to, my answer. It's just, I think that but on the flip side of that, you have people that are curious about the spiritual world, and I believe there's a different set of manipulation for them. Ouija boards, the things that tarot cards, like.
And I've done both of those things or had experiences with them, and what BS comes to mind. It's like, this is not a thing.
Well, that's
how disappointing.
Yeah. I remember, we did a Ouija board when I was, oh gosh.
Did you have the one made by Milton Bradley, like the literal board game you can buy at Target? That's a thing.
I don't remember if that was the case or not. I just remember feeling very manipulated by the person driving the triangle. You know, I'm like, I think you did all this.
You're moving it, dude. What are you
You're
doing?
moving it, yeah.
What must that say about how you think of my intelligence? You are moving it.
Yeah. So that's, but I've also been like, where you say you don't have any, let's say radar, you know, like you don't have any, spirit. Like I do. I always used to kind of, as I came into the awareness of this, my friends would try to sneak up on me, you know, when I was young, and I'd be sleeping, and they'd try to, you know, they'd come over. Of course, my mom would let them in and whatever, and they'd come up and they'd sneak in, and they could never surprise me because I could feel them coming. It just was like a, you know, like, but beyond that, I've also had supernatural kind of like, this place feels evil, you know, like, one, not even if this place feels evil, but something was there. Living with my best friend Randy, growing up, so I was living with him after my divorce, and they'll tell you they believe their house is haunted, and I'll tell you there's something there, you know. And there's a couple different instances that, you know, and the first one, I got home, I think I had been coming home from work, and it was a closing shift, so I didn't get home till like 9:30, 10 o'clock. It was dark in the house. They had stairs going up to the second level of the house, and that's where my room was. It was all dark, and I didn't know if they were there or not, and I kind of stopped in the landing of these stairs, and I'm like, hello, you know, just like, anybody home? And like right next to my ear, I heard just this, and I blood ran cold, and I just started praying and ran upstairs. I'm like, all right, I'm not sticking around for this, whatever this is, you know. And then the other instance in that same house, I was in the kitchen. I came down in the morning. It was probably 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. I got up, went down to the kitchen, opened the fridge. I've got my headphones in, you know, listening to music, and you've probably experienced this, where somebody walks up behind you and you just feel them there.
Yeah. But
So
at the same time, we for some reason, there's this notion that humans have 5 senses, and there's a 6th sense that some of us have. That is absolutely objectively false. We have so many more senses than 5 senses.
well, that makes sense.
We can feel so much.
Intended.
Temperature. I mean, we
Yeah.
balance, vertigo. I mean, you can sense motion. You can sense, in many cases, we do have the ability to sense electromagnetic fields because our biology responds to those forces. So,
Well, in this case,
yeah.
I thought it was his wife. Basically, I call her my sister-in-law. We've been friends since we were 11 and 12.
Yeah.
I thought it was her walking up behind me while I was looking in the fridge. And so I just kind of popped out an earbud and turned around and was like, what's up? And as I turned around, nobody's there. And I could have sworn somebody was walking up behind me while I was standing there looking in the fridge. And I turn around and I'm like, good morning, what's up? And I'm like, oh.
Well, and I have to say that I've had those experiences,
Yeah.
but I in no way have any way to attribute those to anything other than a failure of my senses. And it's because I believe so deeply in the fallibility of the human senses. I mean, they're far from perfect. We're just bad at things. We just are. And, you know, what we see, what we perceive, what our senses, whatever the array of them are, what that allows us to experience of this objective reality is just a sliver of the spectrum of things that can be perceived. And we know that just from animals in the animal kingdom. You know, certain insects and birds can see spectrum of light that we can only see through technology, infrared, ultraviolet, things like that. We have such a significant reduction of color palette according to some other, optical eyes that exist in nature. I liken humans to like Mario in Mario Kart. When you select that character, you're selecting something that's just really, really average. It's not great at everything, at anything, but it's decent at everything. And that's kind of how the human senses are. We evolved for a certain thing. That's why the eyes are on the front of the head, because we're a predator. Our ears are stereoscopic. They're on each side of the head. They have an ear cone, to funnel sound from a certain direction. We evolved to see this certain sliver of reality in an effort to ensure that we were able to eat and hunt and have sex and procreate. And that is exactly what our senses allow us to do. And we push them beyond that threshold, even before things like telescopes and microscopes and augmented hearing and, radar and things like that. Prior to the technology, we still press them because we have intellect, an intellect that is supremely more capable than our senses allow us to take in data. And I think within that, it's very important for us to recognize that, first of all, everything that we see is technically a hallucination. It's just data coming in. It's photons being reflected off of surfaces into our eyes, upside down, and then the brain spins it around and makes it into an image that is very human. And it's different than what other creatures even see. And so within that, I think there's a lot of room for us to see and hear and experience things that aren't there. And that's just the nature of our being an organism on Earth that evolved to do what we do. And I'll tell you what we didn't do is we didn't evolve to, sit and podcast. We didn't evolve to scroll through social media. These are all things that are above and beyond what evolution has placed us here to do. And within that, there's some room for some discrepancies. And I think that's a lot of what I hear anecdotally as far as spiritual encounters or demonic encounters. I think that it's something that they experience, that individual, but I think that we're putting a little too much bias into it to turn it into something that's more meaningful than just a misfire of synapses based on photons entering the eye. You know what I mean?
I do. And a couple different things that I thought about while you were
Rambling?
No. You mentioned our senses are fallible, and I thought of the fact that, if you've ever experienced the either over or under calculating of how many stairs you were going down or up, you know that to be entirely true. And I think it's more terrifying when it's going one too short and you have fallen,
Yeah.
Or, you one too many and you actually just hit that last landing like, oh. So, yes, we're extremely fallible. And the other thing that I kind of thought about was, and funny enough, Danielle and I kind of talked about this leading up to the, once we nailed down what we were talking about this weekend, I've been excited about it, all week. She brought up, and you've got 2 dogs, 2 cats.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that they have a different range of senses. And I know that I've seen with my cat's no longer with me, hasn't been since 21, but I had him for almost 20 years. And there was just some times where he would stop and look at things and you'd be like, what are you looking at, buddy? Because you look over and there's nothing there. Now, I also know they have a heightened sense of hearing, and they can hear, a vehicle 2 blocks away, so they might be looking at something or we just got they're listening, but they look like they're looking, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be a host of things. It could be something to see, particulate in the air that's too small for us to see. Yeah. I think what's interesting about humans, though, is we project onto that.
Yeah.
They see something that's there, that's meaningful, that we are unable to see. And the question would be, I guess, for that is, why would a cat have the ability to see this thing, having no concept of religion, not truly being a sentient creature? How on earth would it be bestowed with this ability to see this demonic thing or whatever it is, but you can't? What makes a cat so much more capable of observing reality than you.
You know, that is and I think that's a good. Gemini wanted to get involved in our conversation.
Well, that was creepy, right? What does that mean, Poppy?
It means somehow one of our voices triggered the AI.
Oh, damn it. I thought I was having my first supernatural experience.
I guess you just ruined it.
Now
my phone's off. No, I'm just kidding. I think that you made a very interesting, and this would be an onion to peel back, and that's we project our perspectives onto these situations, you know, and it's a culmination of our senses, our feelings, our past, and our experiences telling us it means something, you know, or it doesn't. And I think that would be interesting to go down farther at some point. I don't know why a cat would be able to see something that I couldn't, any more than there's also situations where children, human children, you know, have been able to experience things or see things, talk to, you know, like you just see them and you're like, you know, there's knee jerk, oh, that's not real, or what is going on there, you know, and like there's so much stuff out there, and I think it goes back to our wiring and our perspective, you know, like, I know that I've had, and to expand upon that, Christianity and faith, you know, like the wiring is there. I've talked to Danielle, and it's one of the hardest things for a Christian when trying to share with friends and family that they love and whatnot, is how it makes us feel. Like that's not something I can hand you and say, I've just experienced this, and I can't bottle it up and make you drink it. You know, I can't feel this for you, you know.
Right.
But I think that when you kind of apply that to what we're talking about, you know, you've never experienced anything like that. And if you did, it might be life-changing, but until you do, it would be,
well,
you know.
I will say that I have experienced being in the presence of someone who is having one of these experiences. And that's very interesting to me, that we can both, me and another person, be in the same location and experience the same event, and for us to have completely different perspectives as to what that was and why it was. And it's happened many times in my life. You know, I'm a guy who really enjoys novel experiences. I like bold personalities. I like unusual people. I'm a guy who you could call a drug guy. You know, I have a long experience with, you know, experimenting with hallucinogens and trying to find, you know, hidden layers of reality. I wouldn't say that I'm a psychonaut, but I'm a fan of psychonauts. And so consciousness and all the experiences therein are extremely interesting to me. And that's resulted in me having a life where I've had a lot of experiences with, for lack of a better term in the context of this conversation, unusual people. And within that, I've had the chance to observe some of these things happening to someone while I am there. And it is completely different than what I'm experiencing. And again, you know, maybe it's projection by me or by that person, or maybe a combination of the two. Maybe it's just a variance of our perspectives, but I observe somebody have an experience in which either something was a pattern that culminated into something that was very striking and projected a lot of meaning into this person's mind, or they have actually seen or witnessed something that you would call supernatural. And I am on the other side of them going, what do you mean? That is not what just happened. And again, you know, to your point about influence and whatnot, maybe that's just the demon not wanting to touch me because I'm already where they need me to be. But I've observed it. And to me, it's just anecdotal evidence that reality is as subjective as anything is, and our interpretation of it is even more so. And things that people find meaning in, I do not many times, and vice versa as well. I don't believe in any intrinsic meaning in the universe. I don't think that there is any purpose to anything. I think that's a construct, although a valuable one to us, and something I hold dear to my heart. I mean, that's the mission of my life, is to try to forge some kind of purpose and meaning. But I don't believe it's predestined. I don't believe that there's any reward or any sort of punitive sort of action taken if I do or don't do something. I think it's really just how we decide to run this ship we're driving. And I have either chosen, or I have just, fallen victim to this notion that there is nothing higher, there is nothing supernatural, and there is only this. And whatever this is, we've got to make the most of. And that's kind of my de facto position on it.
I can say, as somebody who does or has experienced those things, I've definitely met people who have experienced it on higher levels, and I felt just supernatural, I've listened to preachers preach about experiencing miracles, and I'm like, I've never experienced anything like that, but I trust you, so what do you do with it? And
you trust but verify, Bobby.
Well, no, I know, but it's not an isolated event. It's not like they're the only person that's ever experienced that type of event.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just another of that type of event that's happened in human history, and I'll segue off of that. First off, by all means, comments, guys. I would love, this is obviously an invitation,
It is. And I want to believe, so
if you believe in ghosts,
give me some help there.
If you believe in, these kind of things, give us your take. But as far as the supernatural, and you could say it was coincidence, but I'll say you were involved in bringing me back from Texas in 2020, and it was an answer to prayer. And it was a very A or B type of thing, right? If A happened, and I had no inclination that we had lost contact really since I had moved to Texas in 2019. And in 2020, I was sitting there in telesales, and I was not enjoying it. And I was like, if I'm supposed to keep doing this, let this happen. But if I'm not supposed to keep doing this, God, show me a sign that I'm supposed to stay with Verizon. And lo and behold, you called me out of the blue, and you're like, hey, do you want to come back to the store and work with me? And now I was in Texas, you were in Iowa. Make sense of that, of what you will, but for me, it was an answer to prayer. There was obviously, coincidence. I don't know. I don't think so, but
coincidence is really just something that we label things.
Yeah.
I think you can look at that whole situation from either perspective and it be as valid. I strongly believe, because reality is so subjective, as I said before, it's just our interpretation of sensory input. That's extremely subjective. There's a processor inside of that head that makes heads or tails of this data. And so by proxy, it's going to be a different experience for everybody. And where I don't put any supernatural meaning on that event, I understand why you would. But at the end of the day, it's the same thing. We're both making meaning out of something that otherwise, unless interpreted by each of us through our individual lenses, would have no intrinsic meaning. And I think that that is supremely human. And I think that's what makes us unique, is that we are able to interpret these things and assign meaning to it. Because again, I don't believe that there is any predestined purpose to any of this reality, this existence, earth, human, spirits, any of that. It's just what we make of it. And within that, it's open to interpretation. So I don't reject your perspective, and I'm thankful that it happened. I think the big difference is with or without a divine heavenly Father, I believe that it would have happened because it's what you wanted, subconsciously or otherwise. And I certainly needed you. So we both had a need and a relationship that existed prior. So the likelihood of what happening was far from negligible. You might even say likely because of the circumstance you were in and the feelings that you had about it. So I look at it from your perspective. I would hope that what happened. And being a faithful person like you are, why wouldn't you thank your God for that and attribute that to your God? I think that makes perfect sense from what I know of religion and the religious experience through the lens of people like you, or even my own spiritual religious lens from prior to me being this atheist agnostic guy. I completely understand and do not reject your perspective on that.
Well, and I think that's a good invitation to kind of wrap this up in the lens of agree and disagree and still be friends.
Yeah, what a great definition. What a good example
Yeah.
of that. Yeah, we do not see eye to eye on this, and we do not hold each other to account over it.
Yep. So what's your interpretation? And I say that the you of the listener.
We're
Are
curious.
ghosts real? Are they what you think they are? Are they what I think they are? Or are they nothing like what Jason thinks they are?
And can we get enough feedback from any listeners to make this into another episode? Because I would love to touch on the concept of consciousness. And, I had someone last night reach out to me on social media, and based on one of my recent posts about the multiverse, asking me what I think happens after we die. Now, my answer is very simple. It's the same thing that happens before we're born. I mean, why be afraid of that? Are you afraid of the time before you were born? I'm not. That seems silly to me. So, of course, I'm not afraid of the time after I'm gone, but I think the experience is the same, and I guess you would call it oblivion. There's no pain, there's no suffering, there's just the same thing that was there before you were born. But that's my interpretation, and I'm really, really curious because we do not, from a scientific perspective, know what consciousness is. We know very little about it, especially considering we use it every day to explore reality. It's kind of like quantum mechanics. We don't know how it works at all, but we use it every day to build technology and pave the way for a future, but we don't get it. And that's the same thing with consciousness. So if anyone can come up with some ideas of how we can spin this episode into something that goes beyond, that would be awesome.
And if y'all want to see us go stay and somewhere like the Villisca Axe House or any other number of haunted places and put our money where our mouth is, let us know. We're curious.
We are.
That'd
Be fun. It'd be great content.
That, and happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Agree to Disagree and Still Be Friends. I'm Jason.
I'm Robert.
And we will see you next time, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.